Hey there, and welcome back to MurderTube. The case that I have for you today is a deadly relationship between two young individuals that left their families devastated. But don't think Romeo and Juliet. In fact, the coroner for this case had said this isn't a Romeo and Juliet deal, this is far worse than that. This is the case of David Ludwig. Now, David Gregory Ludwig was born on the 28th of April, 1987, in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. His family were devout evangelical Christians, and he was homeschooled. But the important part is in 2005, when David met Kara Borden. Kara was similar to David in that she was also from Lancaster County. Her family were also devout evangelical Christians, although they did go to a different church than the Ludwig family, and she was also homeschooled. In fact, David and Kara had met in a support group for homeschooled children, and they started a relationship. The parents of both of these were concerned about this relationship, though. See, David was 18 years old, and Kara was only 14 years old. The legal age of consent in Pennsylvania is 16. However, you can have sexual relations with someone under 16 if you are within 3 years age difference of them. Obviously, David was 4 years older than Kara, so in the eyes of the law, this was statutory rape. The Borden family, of course, had the most concern about this relationship. They did not like an 18-year-old having a sexual relationship with their 14-year-old religious daughter. And it was in November of 2005 when this issue reached a tragic and deadly boiling point. David and Kara had stayed out all night together, and in the morning when David was dropping Kara off back at her house, her parents summoned David into the house. David and her parents argued for about an hour, with her parents demanding that he end the relationship with their daughter, and David refusing. Eventually, Kara's dad, Michael Borden, escorted David out of the house. As Michael walked down the hallway leading David to the front door, David pulled out a handgun. He shot Michael in the back of the head. Kara's little sister, Caitlin, just 13 years old, had witnessed her own father murdered. She was terrified and she ran to her bedroom where she hid in the closet, and then she heard a second gunshot. After Michael was murdered, Kara's mother, Catherine, tried to get out of the chair that she was sat in, and from about 6 feet away, David shot her in the head, murdering her also. Kara's younger brother, just 9 years old, ran to the neighbor's house to ask for help, and the neighbors called 911. David fled in his parents' 1998 Volkswagen Jetta, and Kara was missing. An Amber Alert was issued for the missing and kidnapped young girl. Later that same day, law enforcement in Belleville, Indiana, spotted the Ludwig vehicle. But David led the police on a 5-mile high-speed pursuit that a pursuing trooper described as very reckless, very dangerous. David was driving 90 to 95 miles per hour, at times in oncoming lanes, and forcing head-on traffic into the ditch. But the chase ended when David crashed into a tree. The kidnapped 14-year-old girl was in the vehicle also, but neither David nor Kara were injured in the crash. Now, David didn't try to hide what he had done. He confessed right away to law enforcement, and he received multiple charges. 2 counts of first-degree homicide, 1 count of sexual assault, 1 count of reckless endangerment of a minor, 1 count of a firearm violation, and 1 count of kidnapping. The kidnapping charge was dropped when law enforcement determined that Kara had willingly left with David. Immediately after her parents were murdered, as David was leaving the house, Kara ran after him, wanting to go with him, and she also wanted to get married to him. It was determined that she did not plot or partake in the murders at all, so she faced no charges, However, the local gossip about her certainly was not kind. A search warrant on the Ludwig home was executed, and law enforcement recovered a collection of 54 firearms and associated ammo. In the car, a pistol was found that was used as the murder weapon of Kara's parents, Michael and Catherine Borden. There was also 2 other pistols and a Ruger Mini 14 rifle. In the Borden home, there was yet another pistol of the Ludwig collection, and this one was wrapped in a towel. During the search warrant on the Ludwig home, 2 laptops and some videotapes were also seized. Among these was an 18-minute video that was of some interest to law enforcement. The video was David and one of his 18-year-old friends discussing a home invasion that they perhaps executed, according to law enforcement. These 2 18-year-olds also discussed having forcible sex with the 14-year-old Kara and her 13-year-old sister. Prosecution was seeking the death penalty for David, so on June 14, 2006, he took a plea deal that would spare his life. He was sentenced to 2 life sentences in prison without parole. The Borden family asked that David not make a statement in court, not even an apology. They thought it was a bit late for any sort of apology. The DA said some may question why a 14-year-old would get in his car after her father was murdered. That's certainly a legitimate question. Kids make rash decisions under stress that are basically not understandable. David's lawyer has said, "He is not inherently evil. He is not inherently bad. David Ludwig is a very troubled young man." This seems a little bit more than just a troubled young man, but either way, it's another case like so many where the loss of life is so pointless. Over an argument basically about statutory rape. And now the Borden children have to grow up and spend the rest of their lives without their mum and their dad. And I don't think the Borden parents had any ill will to David. They obviously didn't want him dating their young daughter, which I think most parents wouldn't. But if they wanted to get David in trouble, they could have phoned the police and had him charged. They were trying to keep him out of trouble also, but they just wanted to end the relationship. And for them to try and go that route that David wouldn't get in trouble, they were murdered for it. After the murders, the Borden children moved out of state to live with some relatives. And in 2017, David appealed part of his sentencing, trying to get some relief, claiming that he should be treated as a juvenile defendant. Part of his appeal claimed that his lawyer at the time was ineffective, and part cited a Supreme Court ruling that said that it is unconstitutional for a juvenile to serve a life sentence. The judge determined that the appeal was filed too late and found it to be untimely and without merit. He also stated that David was 18 and a half at the time of the murders, so he is not considered a juvenile. David will spend the rest of his life in jail, where just last month in April he turned 35. The one thing that I'm not sure on in this case is why the Borden parents tried to go after David and demand that he end the relationship rather than going after their daughter for that instead. It really didn't involve David to them, unless it's because he was 18, he's technically the adult. But as Kara is only 14 and they are the parents of her, they have more say over what she does. I'm not a parent, so maybe I'm missing something there. Let me know your thoughts in the comment below on, how the Borden family should have handled it, or how you would have handled it, or any other thoughts or comments on this tragic case. Like the video if you liked it, dislike if you didn't. Constructive criticism is always welcome. And subscribe, and I will get working on the next case for you guys. Stay safe out there. It is a very crazy world.